Welcome back to week 38. This is the second video in the business process management conversation, part 4 of the process series. We're going to talk about balancing your processes so that they are as effective and efficient as possible while still delivering that value, still considering that human element. So balance, this is the big differentiator between the other schools of process thought. Whereas lean or Six Sigma is all about getting rid of waste or making things more efficient. This is addressing that, but also considering value in that conversation. So there's three things that need to get balanced that we're going to talk about today. The first is going to be efficiency versus quality. So you can save money by making things more efficient, but you possibly could be sacrificing quality in order to do that. So if you think about the assembly line, you have the assembly line, which is great, which is if you're going to mass produce something and everything looks the same and acts the same, etc. That's great. But if you want that human element, that human touch, you need to have people on the line there adding their own, touch, whatever it is, to what you're selling, to what you're creating. And it's going to everything's going to be a little bit different. So you're not as efficient. It might take longer, but your quality is going to be higher because you have that human touch to everything. And so if you're thinking about this from a services standpoint, if you are a consultant, a lawyer, an accountant, whatever it is, you have those quick responses, those automated responses to emails, that type of stuff. But it might make more sense for you to craft personal emails, personal communications, reach out, call on the phone, whatever it is. And it's not as efficient, but the quality of what you're delivering is higher. So you have to balance. And again, with all of these, you're going to have to balance between the two. Obviously, quality sounds better, but efficiency might make more sense in the long run. It also depends upon the product that you're selling, and that could vary between all of the products. The next thing that we're going to talk about is compliance versus agility. So do you want people to follow the rules? Do you want your team to follow the rules and the processes perfectly, or do you want them to change as they see fit? So this gets back to customer service when we were talking about empowerment. You want your team, you're going to give them guardrails. In my recommendation, you give them guardrails of this is the direction you want to go, and you have to stay in between these two guardrails, but anything in between is up to you. You can go in any direction you want as long as you're within those guardrails. And from a customer experience standpoint, that's much better because it's not black and white. There's no like, oh, I have to go talk to a manager, I need to get approval. It's like, I can make decisions right now that are going to help you and help your experience. So that's compliance versus agility. The last thing that you need to balance is integration versus networking. So this is, this talks about whether or not you want your employees to keep everything in-house and talk, together and pass everything from one person to the next, keep it all in-house. And that's the integration, or the networking, which is, do we want to outsource? So does it make sense to take part of what we're doing, send it to somebody else, and then they send back, a completed product, which we sell, whatever it is? You just need to think about that. But the transparency across the board is the most important part. So whether or not you keep it in-house, or if you're outsourcing, you want to make sure that it's transparent, and you want to know if you are outsourcing, it doesn't matter if what your vendors do. Do you care? Should you care about what your vendors do? Are they a part of your culture? When we go back to, if we're going to go back to that culture section, you want to think about that. When it comes to implementing, there are 3 areas you want to consider. So methods and tools. We've already covered how to document a process with a group of people. That's just getting everybody in the same room. You could have a whiteboard, a piece of paper. This could be on a Zoom call. Doesn't matter. Just walking through start to finish, everything that goes into a process, the inputs, the outputs, and having a good representation of everybody in that room so that if there's any questions or concerns about what's going on, somebody can talk to that. You want to think outside the box when you're implementing. So you want to bring outside opinions on how everything's done. It could be as simple as just bringing somebody in, an expert, just to, spend a day and say, these are the things that I noticed. For instance, I was again in restaurants for years, and I hired a guy. He came in to work in the kitchen, and we had for years been we had our line set up in a certain way, and he came in and just shifted things after a couple of weeks of working there, like just shifted things around. And I walked back and I was like, oh, what's this? He's like, yeah, well, it just makes more sense. It's more efficient. And I was like, oh crap, you're right. That that makes much more sense to have everything set up this way, because there's less turning around, there's less grabbing, there's less moving in between people. But we put up with it for years because that's just what you do. Like, we never stopped to look at it and be like, is there a better way to do this? So just think about that when it comes to methods and tools. When you're delivering processes, make sure you consider the different ways of learning when it comes to your team. So some people might be more visually inclined, some might be more audibly inclined, whatever it is, they might have to actually perform it a couple of times in order to learn it. Just consider that, and that you might have to approach it in multiple ways based upon your team. And some people might be embarrassed that they don't understand what's going on or how to do something. So just think about that. You might need to do some one-on-one stuff with your team. Think about incentives, what's in it for them. We've talked about that already. The culture is a huge piece as well, and being transparent as to why you're changing is a huge part of this as well. And then finally, the last part about this is support. You want to be upfront that what you're doing might not actually work out well. It might blow up in your face, whatever it is. So we're going to try this out. We've done our due diligence. Everything looks good, et cetera, but it might not in theory work. A lot of what you do looks great on paper, but it doesn't actually kind of, pan out to be successful. So you want to make sure that you've got a good feedback loop, getting back into communication strategies, so that people can tell you what's working well, what's not working well, what they like, what they don't like. And then just be flexible. Implementing processes is not an exact science. So you're going to implement it. You're going to have to review, analyze, adjust, change, etc. So don't try and force the square peg into the round hole. Just be flexible about how you approach implementing processes in general. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You can always undo what you did. So just think about that as you start implementing processes. Next week, we've got the follow-up to implementing processes, and that's week 5 of our process series. Looking forward to it.